Welcome to episode 67 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's January 6, 1934, and today's story begins not with a kickoff, but with a shock. Herbert Chapman, Arsenal's manager, one of the most influential architects the sport has ever produced, passes suddenly at just 55 after falling ill with pneumonia just days before. If you love football tactics, if you care about the manager as an idea, if you ever heard a commentator say branding, a system, recruitment, infrastructure, identity, marginal gains, you're living in the world Chapman helped invent. So today we'll do three things. We'll tell the arc of Chapman's football life, from player to pioneer manager. We'll look at the controversies and the reinventions, because his career isn't a neat morality tale. And we'll land on the legacy, the modern manager, the modern club, and the way Chapman's fingerprints still sit on the sport's biggest rituals. Herbert Chapman's story starts in a place that tells you a lot about English football's DNA, Yorkshire. He is born in Kiveton Park in 1878 in a mining community, the kind of place where football becomes more than leisure, becomes rhythm, becomes identity, becomes escape. As a player, he's not the mythic superstar. He plays as an inside forward across a range of clubs, and he lives the early professional reality. Football is still half craft, half experiment. Careers are fluid. Status is unstable. You can be professional without being rich or famous. But Chapman's real gift isn't scoring goals. It's seeing structure. He becomes a manager in the era when manager still often means player manager, and he stands out quickly because he treats football as something you can design, not just play. At Northampton Town, he wins the Southern League in 1908-09, which at the time is a genuine statement of quality. It's not yet the Premier League world, far from it. It's a pre-top flight ecosystem where organized clubs are learning how to become institutions. And Chapman is already doing Chapman things. Preparation, routines, tactical clarity, and a sense that recruitment is not random, it's deliberate. Then comes one of the darkest, most complicated chapters of his career, Leeds City. Chapman manages Leeds City through the 1910s. Then the First World War disrupts the entire football economy and governance system. Wartime guest players, irregular arrangements, blurred lines. Football becomes administratively chaotic. Some clubs start paying players in ways that breach the rules. In 1919, after the war, Leeds City investigated for illegal payments, and the club is expelled from the Football League. Chapman, who had rather abruptly left the club before the final collapse, is nevertheless caught in the fallout. The FA bans him from football. And that matters because it forces you to see Chapman not as a saint, but as a product of football's early professional grey zone, a genius operating in an era where the rules were stricter on paper than they were in practice. But it's also not the end of him. By the early 1920s, the ban is overturned, and Chapman returns, and now we enter the period that turns him into a legend, Huddersfield's town. At Huddersfield, he builds a machine, not a one-season miracle, a real machine. He wins the FA Cup in 1922, then league titles in 24 and 25, and although he leaves before the third consecutive title in 26, the team's architecture is so strong that Huddersfield complete the three-peat. Chapman's legacy there isn't just trophies, it's the idea that a manager can construct a dominant cycle. Then, in 1925, Chapman makes the move that changes the history of an entire club. He joins Arsenal, and the timing is perfect because football itself is about to change. In 1925, the offside law is revised. You now need two defenders, not three, between attacker and goal. The immediate effect across football is panic, more goals, more space, defensive systems breaking. Chapman doesn't panic. He adapts. This is where the modern tactical manager really emerges. Chapman takes the new reality and builds a structure that can live inside it. The famous WM shape of the 3-2-2-3 formation is not just a diagram. It's an answer to a football problem. It's the manager treating laws of the game as design constraints, then engineering a solution. And he pairs that with something equally modern, targeted recruitment. Chapman doesn't just buy good players, he buys pieces for his system. He breaks transfer records. He builds a spine. He thinks about balance. Arsenal go from being a big London club without major honours to becoming a national superpower. The trophies follow. In 1930, Chapman wins Arsenal's first FA Cup, and the match itself becomes part of his legend. Arsenal beat Huddersfield's Town, his former club. That final is remembered for a detail that tells you how Chapman thought. The two teams walk out side by side, together, as a sign of respect. It's the first time that happens in an FA Cup final, a ceremonial innovation that becomes tradition, as you'll know from watching any match live in the stadium or on TV, etc. Then come league titles. Arsenal win the First Division in 1931, and again in 1933. Chapman has made Arsenal a modern powerhouse, built on system, recruitment, and institutional professionalism. And he's not finished, because Chapman isn't only changing what happens between the touchlines, he's changing what the club is. He pushes for innovations that sound normal now, but were radical then. Shirt numbers. In 1928, Arsenal wear numbered shirts in a league match, a Chapman idea designed to help spectators follow the game, and it becomes part of football's future. Floodlights. Chapman is one of the early high-profile advocates. Arsenal installed floodlights at Highbury in the early 1930s, not because TV demands it yet, but because Chapman sees the future. Training visibility, night football, the sport expanding its operating hours. Branding. Chapman even helps reshape the club's geographic identity. In 1932, the Gillespie Road Underground Station is renamed Arsenal, a football club influencing the map, literally. That is brand power, way before football even has the vocabulary for brand power. And then there's the visual identity of Arsenal itself, the red shirt with white sleeves, a look introduced in Chapman's era that becomes a permanent part of what Arsenal means. So by early 1934, Chapman has done something profound. He's taken a club and turned it into a system, a recognizable machine, an institution built to win. And then, on this day, January 6, 1934, he passes. Suddenly. Pneumonia at 55. Arsenal carry on, and the team keeps winning in the 1930s, because the structure Chapman built is bigger than the man. That's the entire point of institutional design, continuity. So what should we take away from Chapman's pathing beyond the obvious respect? Well, 3 points. First, Chapman is where the manager becomes a profession, not a helper. Before Chapman, you can find great trainers and organizers. Chapman is where you start to see the manager as a strategist, architect, builder, someone who designs the club, not just picks the team. Second, modern football isn't just talent, it's systems. Chapman's greatness isn't one tactical trick, it's a combined machine. Tactics, training, recruitment, psychology, stadium operations, identity. He's building a club the way an industrial era mind builds a factory, purposeful, repeatable, and scalable. And third, the sports rituals are often invented by someone, and then they become, oh, that's how it's always been. Like cup final walkouts, shirt numbers, stadium lighting, even a tube station name. These are not timeless. They are decisions. Chapman made decisions that became tradition. On this day, 1934, Herbert Chapman passes, and football loses one of its first true modern minds. But his deeper legacy is this. He showed the sport what it could become when it stopped being only a game and started being an institution permeating across society, and importantly, careers. That's all for episode 67 of OTD. Herbert Chapman, his passing on January 6, 1934, and why his ideas still run through the modern game. If your club has a Chapman figure, the builder, the tactician, the organizer, who dragged the institution into a new era, email me at otd@17lawsguide.com. And please rate the show 5 stars, subscribe, comment, tell a friend, anything the algorithm can pick up on to push us up the charts. Tomorrow, in episode 68, we go to Spain and to one of football's greatest acts of treason and theater. Real Madrid 5, Barcelona 5, in January 1995, just 364 days after Barca beat Madrid 5-0, with Michael Laudrup playing for the winning side in both matches. Don't miss it.